Hello and welcome to Youth Forum on Foreign Policy's Embassy Dialogue interview series. Today we have with us a very distinguished guest, Mr. Richard Verma, who is the Ambassador of the United States of America to India. Hello and welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Today we'd be putting certain contemporary questions to Mr. Verma, which would be adhering to strategic relations and foreign policy between India and the United States of America. I would like to go to my research head, Mritika. Can you please start with the interview?
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi.
My first question is, in the past 2 years, that's from 2014 till 2016, PM Narendra Modi has made more visits to United States of America than any other country. Do you think that the world's oldest and largest democracy are finally coming together, keeping aside the mutual differences?
Sure, I do actually. I think we've had a great last 2 years in our relationship, but really this relationship has been close for many, many years. And if you look at just the people-to-people ties between our two countries, there are now more people of Indian descent in the United States than any country in the world. My own family emigrated to the United States in the early 1960s from Punjab. I'm really familiar with the really close network of people-to-people connections that we've had, commercial connections. It's also true that over the last several decades that our government-to-government relationship has had some ups and it's had some downs. And there's no question we're on an upswing, but I also believe it's not just a temporary upswing. I think this is the trajectory we're on and we will stay on. And we've expanded and increased our cooperation in so many areas, in the defense area, in the trade area, in the clean energy area. And yes, I think President Obama and I think Prime Minister Modi deserve a lot of the credit. And they're building, as I said, upon the decades of hard work that have gone into the relationship. And I think, let me just say, the world will be better off with this U.S. and India best partnership that we have with us today.
Ambassador Verma, taking from the same strand of thought, so every high-profile visit of our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, to any country, specifically the United States, attracts immense non-state actors' attention. Do these engagements promise capital inflow in India, or is it really just mere showmanship? What is your opinion?
Well, look, I don't think the objective of the visits is just to increase capital inflow to India, and I would hopefully expand it to create capital flow between both of our countries. I mean, our objective is to create opportunities for people in both nations and economic opportunities for both of our peoples. And I think the Prime Minister's speeches, and including those in the United States, have been to give people a sense of what's happening here, to help them feel some of the excitement about where India is going as a rising power in this century. And they've been, I think, exceptionally impactful. And I've had the pleasure to be at a couple of them.
USA is gearing up for its forthcoming presidential elections this year. So do you
I've
think...
heard.
So do you think there will be a change of government that might alter a change of America's foreign policy stand towards India?
One thing I've seen over the last 30 years or so, and I started working in the House of Representatives when I was just 18 years old, I've seen the incredible bipartisan support for the U.S.-India relationship. I'd almost say, and there are very few things in Washington that are nonpartisan, I would almost say that the U.S.-India relationship is a nonpartisan issue in that both parties across the political spectrum have recognized the importance of this relationship. And so I think regardless of the outcome next year in the presidential election, regardless of which party controls the House or the Senate, that the U.S.-India trajectory and partnership will remain quite strong. You only have to look at the largest single caucus in the House of Representatives is the U.S.-India caucus.
So it's always 2 steps forward and no step backward.
I think when it comes to where we are today, what we've done is we've set up a lot of mechanisms and platforms and government dialogues to talk about those issues that may divide us still. So look, we're not the same countries. We don't aspire to be the same countries. So the two world's largest democracies will periodically have differences. But I think instead of taking a step backwards, as you've suggested, we now sit down and work our way through those issues.
Coming to a more strategic issue, in a recent interview you mentioned that the Indo-US nuclear deal will be implemented effectively in 2016. But why has there been so much of delay? An agreement that created ripples in political circles of India and USA since 2005. Why have the two countries put the 123 agreement on an autopilot mode for so long?
Sure. Look, first, I think anyone who deals in the subject of building nuclear reactors knows that this is not a quick process. This is a multi-year process that requires approvals at many different levels. I'd also say we were stuck on the issue of liability, and without getting too technical, there was a notion that liability for building a nuclear reactor here would be spread out to all the suppliers in the nuclear pipeline, and that's inconsistent with how nuclear plants are built in other parts of the world. With the President's visit in January, and even going back a few months with the Prime Minister's visit to Washington in September of 14, we were able to work through that liability issue. So one of the big roadblocks we were actually able to navigate. And now that's why I'm optimistic about 2016. The insurance pool has been created, the liability issue has been navigated, and now I'm confident working with the private sector we can get towards implementation.
Well,
now,
let's hope for the best.
I think that's right, because remember what this is about. This is also about trying to provide a source of energy to the 300 million people that currently don't have access to electricity. So I think it's an important part of the mix, and I am optimistic about where we're headed.
As you mentioned, that India-US dialogue is always 2 steps forward, right? So focusing on the youth engagement, we know a large percentage of Indian students head abroad, especially to America, to pursue their higher studies.
Last year, 132,000, the highest ever, 30% increase over the previous year.
But unfortunately, the newspaper reports claim that most of them are deported back due to security concerns.
No, there's been no such report. When you talk about most of them, there have been cases of students being returned, but the vast majority of students have continued to pursue their studies.
I would like to specifically point out this example of Silicon Valley University, where few students
the Tri-Valley students.
Yeah, I just want to be careful that we're using the right kind of statistics here. And in those cases, what we've found is that, look, not only do you need a visa to go to the United States, but you also have, when you get to the port of entry, you have the Customs and Border Protection, where you have to have the valid documents and answer the questions of the Customs and Border Protection. And what we found in some cases is that there were some students that were not intending to study in the United States, and that they were intending to work, for example. Now that would be inconsistent with the visa. What we've said, to the extent there were bona fide students that feel like they were wrongly turned away, we want to hear from you. We want to increase the number of education advisors that we have, for example, at our consulates across the country. Our interest is in seeing more students go to the United States and having more Americans come here. We have no interest in turning people back, but we want students to get the value of a good education. We want their families to have the value of a good education, and we want them to go there for the purpose that they applied for the visa. In that way, we can protect the system and continue to see the kind of growth that we've seen. This is a really important part of our relationship. And again, if there were bona fide students that got caught up in some way, let's work with them. Let's work with a legitimate education advisor. I think we just have to be careful making sure students are really...
Not duped.
Students are not duped, that people are not are taking advantage of the system.
I guess many students would be very optimistic after seeing this interview.
Yeah.
I hope so. I think we have to go back to the numbers.
Yes.
132,000 is the second highest of any country in the world
Sending.
providing students to the United States.
Mhm.
And the vast majority of them have an excellent experience in the U.S.
So before we just conclude this interview,
Yes.
a very important issue, and that is of terrorism. And I would specifically want to point something out here, that the US Congress every year shells out an exemplary amount of dollars to the Pakistan state for resolving terrorism woes. Considering the recent Pathankot airbase attack carried out by United Jihad Council, an organization which has been blacklisted by the CIA itself, then why is it that the United States is engaging into shadowboxing with India when it comes to cross-border terrorism and providing money to Pakistan again and again?
Well, look, I don't think it's shadowboxing. I think we condemn the attack in the strongest possible terms. We've pledged our cooperation to bring those perpetrators to justice. And frankly, the U.S. has led a global coalition in the fight against terror for a couple decades now, particularly after the attacks on the World Trade Center after 9/11. And so, look, if you look at our policy with regard to assistance in Pakistan, I think it would surprise people to learn that 2/3 of our assistance is civilian. It's for health, it's for education, it's for infrastructure, it's for energy. And 1/3 of our assistance is on the military side, and that is used to go after and target extremist groups which present a danger to Pakistani people, to Indian people, and to other people. I think the most important thing is that we stand up against terror in all of its forms, wherever it emanates. And in that regard, the U.S. and India have the strongest and closest partnership, and we will continue to do so in the years ahead.
So my last question is, what are your views on an initiative like this, say about the Embassy Dialogue of Youth Forum on Foreign Policy, when it comes to promoting foreign policy at track 1 and track 2 levels of diplomacy and among the students and community at large?
Yeah.
What are your views on it?
I think it's great, and I congratulate you for doing this and for taking this initiative. I think the more people outside of government that actually are talking about these issues and helping to advance these issues reinforces the work in the government-to-government sector. And frankly, you can help us and you can educate us on those issues that matter. I really do mean that. When I see the work of diplomacy that our artists in both of our countries do, that our musicians do, that our health professionals, our business people, really across the board, diplomacy is something that's carried out at all different levels and in all different forums. And if it was just limited to diplomats or government professionals, I think we would not tap in to the great potential in both of our societies. That's the first point. The second point is the fact that you have youth focused taps in to the great potential of India, especially where you have such an incredible youth dividend, which is also one reason why India will be and already is such an incredibly important player on the world stage in this century. And it's only going to increase over the years. And the more people that are interested in and learning about and engaging in these kinds of issues, the better it'll be for our bilateral relationship. And frankly, I think the better it'll be for India as a global power.
So thank you, Mr. Verma,
Thank
for
you.
being so frank and vocal about
Yeah,
the issues.
of course.
Thank you so
you.
much for our viewers for watching. This was Embassy Dialogue interview series. Thank you.